Hello, my name is Kyle, and I'm an animator working in the video game industry. Breaking down the animation of video games is something I really enjoy doing, so I'd like to share it with you on this channel. Today, we're back in Street Fighter 6 and going over the Chinatown Peacekeeper himself, Jamie. Jamie's style is a mix of the drunken fist and breakdancing, and a lot of this does come through in his moment-to-moment gameplay animations. However, he has a lot of animations that are very elaborate, but don't have much of a gameplay function. They're unique, and a lot of effort was put into them for something players don't often see. I wanted to go through some of those as I think they do a lot to help fulfill the fantasy of who Jamie is as a character. So let's dig into these moves. The first one is a bit more obvious, especially to people who play Jamie. All characters have an attack called Standing Light Kick. It generally speaking hits low and in front of the character. Most characters' attacks repeat themselves if you keep pressing the button over and over again. Jamie, however, actually has 3 animations for 3 Standing Light Kicks. All serve the same function with the same timing, but when strung together they create a small little dance move. This is impressive because they decided to create 3 unique anims that link into each other to make a whole little sequence, for an attack that most characters just have one single animation for. Each one also has to have its own exit so you can stop pressing the button and go back to idle at any time. This is a really cool detail that they added, as it helps convey his character being a breakdancer, and doing it within the gameplay and not something like an idle break animation or a taunt. Forward Heavy Kick. This move has one big animation change, which is once you reach drink level 4, more on drinks later. He has a completely separate animation for this. The one you see less often though is actually how dramatic of an outro animation plays after the move comes out. An outro is something that happens after the main action, but doesn't take away player control, so it can essentially be skipped if the player presses any button or gets interrupted. Similar to the Standing Light Kick, this essentially has no gameplay function. Even myself, who plays Jamie a lot, didn't see this one for quite a while, as in a match, you're at least holding block after using this move, which will cancel the outro. It's unlikely you'll ever see this in a real match because it means you're right in front of your opponent and not pressing anything afterwards for a significant amount of time. There are a few small little details in his crouch. Most characters have a straight up and down crouch. They go from where they are, standing at idle, drop their weight without moving their feet, and now they're in a lower stance. Jamie actually completely changes his stance. He crosses his legs quickly, which is a tricky thing to do in such a fast animation, and also has this nice retraction and expansion of his arms to help accentuate the motion. You can really feel this in his arms when you crouch and stand back and forth. He also has an animation that plays when you press the crouch that lets him continue the residual energy of moving down so quickly. His weight bounces up and down a few times before settling into this pose and beginning the standard crouch idle. Without the bounce, his body would hit kind of hard when he crouches down into his pose. Now earlier I mentioned drink levels. Jamie has a unique mechanic in which he can take a quick swig or drink of his bottle, and each level unlocks new attacks and special moves for him to use. Each level allows him to play just a little bit looser, and that's reflected in his animations. Capcom could have just done one state for not maxed out, aka 0 to 3, and then a new animation for when you're at level 4, but they actually put a lot of effort into how he idles in the game based on each individual level, so you really feel a sense of progression. All characters have small animations that play if you idle for too long so they don't feel too static. One interesting note about Jamie's is that it only plays when he is at 0 or 1 drinks. At this point, he's still pretty much in control, unaffected by his drinks, and is doing a small dance move that is more precise and sharp, and not as loose as he gets later when he starts drinking. They could have opted to just not give him a break since for levels 2, 3, and 4, there isn't one, but they still put in the effort to give him one at this lowest level. Last thing I wanted to go over were some of his really long animations, which are his idle and his crouch states. Each time Jamie takes a drink, he has a new idle animation for both crouching and standing. While the changes can be very minor, especially in the first few levels, it really helps support the progression of his drink level and fighting style becoming much more loose. At level 0 for his standing idle, his idle is pretty loose and bouncy. It has a nice rhythm to it, and he really leans into this dancer style. He's got a nice bounce in his head and his arms, and he has that one cool idle break I mentioned earlier. For his crouching idle at level 0, the crouch idles are similar to his standing idles, but it's its own animation. His pose is entirely different with his balance being way lower. He has the same energy though as a standing idle, very loose, very bouncy, and his arms have a nice in and out motion to them. For his level 1 standing idle, here his bouncing increases. The overall motion is slowly becoming larger. His head has a lot more rotation in it as well, more like he's dancing to a beat. His wrist and fingers are also just a tiny bit looser at this level. For his crouching idle at level 1, it's pretty similar to his level 0 crouch, but it's just a little bit looser. For his level 2 standing idle, this is where it really starts changing. While Jamie still has his nice bounce and rhythm, he also adds his long sway back and forth as he really begins to loosen up. You can see how drastically he shifts his weight back and forth by seeing how much weight he puts on each foot as he shifts around. For his crouching idol at level 2, he also loosens up a lot. His head starts bobbing a lot more, his arms start this circular motion, and his general bounce rhythm increases. He's almost got a double bounce to him now. He still has that back and forth sway from his standing idol you can slightly see, but because he's crouching, it's not as broad of a motion. You can see it's there because if you watch his knees, you can see that the weight shifts forward and backwards. For his level 3 standing idol, he's really starting to get into a new rhythm. He's bouncing a lot more than he was in his original idol, and that back and forth sway has been heavily extended. He's really spending time forwards and backwards in the two different poses. This helps him feel just a little less in control. He's stable, but his weight is shifting around a lot. He's also got these slight circular motions to his hands, like he's almost grabbing and pulling the air in around him. You can also start to see how red in the face he's getting at this point. His head also has a lot more bobbing around, and he's much less locked into his opponent. For his crouching idol at level 3, it's a lot more push version of his level 2 crouching idol. Still lots of loose swaying going on, and his body hits poses that are just a lot more twisted and pushed here, almost like he's more off balance than he was before. Now for level 4, the more obvious one. If you play Jamie or against a Jamie, you've definitely been able to see the difference at this stage. He's got a cool intro animation that plays as he's fully loaded up, his hair busts out of his braids, and not only do his idols change, but a lot of his gameplay animations change here as well. His locomotion changes, and some of his attacks change as well. But let's still go over the idols just for comparison's sake. For his standing idol, he's fully loosened up now. He's barely even looking at his opponent. Part of leaning into the drunken boxer style is the unpredictability. He's constantly almost falling over here. He also starts stepping towards and away from the fighting line in the game that the characters exist on. This is definitely a rare thing in a 2D fighter, but it really helps sell how out of it he is. It almost looks like he's going to trip over at a few points. This animation is very long and elaborate, and it really sells that he's totally hit his max. He does for a very brief moment actually hit his original idol pose. This is only significant because it actually shows you where the loop of the animation is. For his crouching idol at level 4, it's another really long, elaborate animation, very distinct from his original crouching stance. He has a lot of cool little gestures here, one where he even does a motion of taking another drink. He's truly getting lost in the weeds at this point. There are a few moments of him still getting close to being off balance, but stays stable. It's a very active idol compared to his original. These idols and crouching animations are incredibly long. This is a lot of animation for a state you really don't often see players staying in. In fighting games, there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of movement, so to see a character idling like this is kind of rare. But there's so much character they added here to help sell the progressive drinking mechanic. As I mentioned earlier, there are a lot more obvious things that change for Jamie as he progresses through his drink levels. He unlocks new moves, some of his attacks change, and the drastic change at level 4 is really obvious. However, this video is meant to dive a bit deeper into the things that Capcom spent a lot of time polishing that can fly a little bit more under the radar in gameplay. While these animations are unnecessary in the grand scheme of things, I think it goes to show how the animators on this game used every single moment they possibly could to have Jamie do something unique. It's really a labor of love. Jamie is easily my favorite character to play in the game, and I hope maybe this encourages you to give him a try. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the streets.